Good morning, or good afternoon, I should say. It's quite nice out. Actually, it's 80 degrees on this September 23rd in Western New York. And I am coming to you today. I'm not going to do any inviting or anything. I'm just going to wing it here and see what happens. I am coming to you to talk about an article this week that was published in the journal Nature Geoscience. And we did not put this on Environmental Coffee House. And I didn't put it on because I really did not like the way the research was reading in the mainstream media. So basically, I read not the actual journal article itself. I read the stuff that, came out as a result. Okay? So being that I'm the skeptic of things like that, I had decided to wait a little while just to see what was going on with this article. And it was just like I thought. The authors had to come out and they had to straighten out the mainstream media on this. And I'm going to read you an article that I found this morning from Gizmodo, which I actually like, another verified source that I use. Then we're going to talk about a couple of other things that are on my mind, and that has to do with the EPA and fracking, radon, and national monuments. And I see that Daniel Lindbergh has joined, and good morning, Daniel. Good morning, Marcia. Good morning, Rebecca. Here in Western New York, I know it's afternoon, so I have to stop saying good morning. But so the article's called "New Climate Study Does Not Contradict Global Warming," no matter what Breitbart says. It caught my eye, and I know the Guardian had put something in, and there were a lot of, again, news articles that caught up with this research, and they ran with it. They said, "Oh my God," without having really examined the research. And this is what happens, So you can't run with everything, and we really don't run with everything. Sometimes, and I excuse me, I maybe have a little allergies. It's 80 degrees this morning, or this afternoon out here. And what you're looking at is my woodpile a la tornado. I've said before that I didn't ask for it, but here we go. So the science news media has a pretty simple job. Find facts and report them. Typically, this entails reading a scientific study, which I like to do personally, talking to the study's authors and outside experts, writing and fact-checking the confusing bits with experts again. Okay, I don't always get to talk to the experts when I read my science articles, and I do have a little expertise in this, having written articles that were published in the Journal of Health, American Journal of Health Promotion and Health Promotion Journal, but that was in the 90s, and that was research I was doing for corporate health promotion. And the whole thing was to lower the prices for insurers. We were for corporations that purchased insurance. And it was really implementing healthy lifestyles for the employees, and having these corporations with their health care promotion programs do this. So I wrote with other people, and I know my way around some journal articles. Maybe not these scientific articles, but I try my best. And that's why I'm here talking to you. So sometimes the narrative the media wants is not exactly supported by the study or the experts. Well, such is the case with a new paper on climate change. The study, published in Nature Geoscience earlier this week, it took a stab at trying to figure out how much carbon humans can emit before crossing that 1.5 degrees Celsius global warming threshold set forth in the Paris Climate Agreement. And it came to a sort of optimistic conclusion, which, hey, great, right? We'd like to hear that. We may have more carbon in the bank than we thought. Other experts were immediately skeptical, but that didn't stop several outlets from running stories that twisted the study's key find into a bad parody of itself, suggesting that the fear of global warming is exaggerated and that climate change might not be as threatening as previously thought. Wouldn't we all like that? Would not we all really like that? I would. My God, I would. I don't want the planet to be damaged any more than it is. But at the same time, we cannot go on the way we are, burning the fossil fuels that we burn. We can't. Do you think I want to really burn all that wood? What am I going to do with it? It fell in my yard. We're going to heat the house. The only other option I have is propane, which I don't like. Or electric, which I've talked about actually. Which actually is kind of the clean one around here because it comes from the falls. All right. So the study published, they said, it was exaggerating, maybe a little bit. Things went totally off the rail from there. The scientists who produced those doomsday reports for the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change have finally come clean. The computer models they've been using to predict runaway global warming are wrong, bloviated the Sun. Quote, climate alarmists have finally admitted that they've got it wrong on global warming. Breitbart piled on. Steve Bannon's brag. It got so out of hand that the University of Oxford-based researchers released a statement yesterday disavowing the idea that we no longer need to take aggressive action to reduce carbon emissions, followed by a response article in The Guardian this morning. And I read that one. But I chose to use the one I'm reading because I thought actually it was pretty good. So this is what really happened. The researchers made some assumptions about how much global warming has already occurred. Okay? Then they used models to project that future carbon emissions of up to about 900 billion tons of CO2 could be compatible with limiting warming to 1.5 centigrade this century. That's equivalent to about 20 more years of CO2 emissions at current rates. So you could see why these rags jumped on it saying, see, we can go on and we can do the same shit we've always done and we don't have to make any changes to our behavior, which is just a bunch of nonsense. Bloviate. Rebecca loves the word bloviate. So this article goes on and says, contrast that with other estimates of the remaining carbon budget derived from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which suggests that we have maybe 4 years before we're locked into at least 1.5 degrees of warming, and it sounds somewhat promising. Again, that's what we want. But that may be not what we're going to get. Somewhat, quote, our analysis suggests that pursuing efforts to limit the temperature increase to 1.5 centigrade is not, and I better be reading this right, is not chasing a geophysical impossibility. It's Celsius, sorry, not centigrade. I'm completely like, it's early. Okay, it's not chasing a geophysical impossibility, but it is likely to require a significant strengthening of the NDCs at the first opportunity in 2020, the researchers write. In other words, countries will still have to ratchet up their ambitions a lot in order to limit warming to the 1.5 degrees. Aggressive emissions reductions would need to start today, and our CO2 output would need to be brought to net zero in about 40 years at least. Now, I doubt I'll be alive in 40 years. And do I even want to be? No. But are there children and grandchildren to think about? Well, I have one. 29-year-old who is not having children, she says. But others do. What kind of world do we want for them? You got to excuse me, man. Something is really making me feel itchy out here. I don't know what it is, but... So, other climate scientists pushed back against the new study's estimate. And hi, Lori Riley. Oh, Lori joined us from Houston. My heart's with Lori. Oh, let me go on here. Other climate scientists pushed back against the new study's estimate, saying that the pre-industrial baseline period the authors used to figure out how much warming has already occurred, temperature data from the UK's Met Office spanning 1861 to 1880, is misleading. There's an ongoing debate as to how these baseline temperatures are defined. But as climatologist Zeke Hausfather points out at Carbon Brief, other global temperature records that go back as far would have yielded more warming by 2015, hence less carbon in the bank. That's interesting, right? Less carbon in the bank. All right, before I get winded away, now the wind's blowing. Whether the authors... Okay. Whether the authors are correct in their baseline or not, the study's message is that it's time to rest on our laurels if we want to limit global warming. But that misleading message was compounded. And it was compounded by the suggestion in the paper that the climate models have overestimated warming by 0.3 degrees Celsius, taking in this to mean, oh boy, this is like not as good as I thought it was going to be out here. Taking this to mean that temperatures are not rising as quickly as the IPCC says they are. Not only was the paper not intended to assess discrepancies between climate models and observations, its findings are in line with the IPCC. In fact, which the authors readily admit, our predictions for warming rates over coming decades are identical to those of the IPCC, study authors Miles Allen and Richard Miller wrote in The Guardian. Comparing models with observations isn't always an easy or even a good thing to do. For instance, while some models, including those in the paper, estimate air temperatures over the planet's surface, scientists measure Earth's temperature in both the air and the surface oceans, which have been warming more slowly. Studies that account for both the land-ocean sampling issues and the needed correlations for historical forcings show no discrepancy between observed versus modeled warming. Penn State climate scientist Michael Mann told Gizmodo, this online resource that I found. All of which is to say, climate science is hard. And you get different answers about the future based on what assumptions you make about the past and what models you choose to look at. These differences are amplified when we're trying to understand small changes over the short term, which can lead to some wildly varying conclusions about what sorts of carbon policies are appropriate for hitting specific and specifically low global warming targets. Still, the essential conclusion of this new study didn't differ all that much from those that came before it. We need aggressive carbon reductions immediately if we want to keep climate change to a minimum. I liked the article because it was easy to understand. And a lot of us, I always say, are not scientists. So the people that are, and again, I hate that climate deniers. You know, I really don't like using the word, but the people that just simply do not want to understand and believe that human-caused activity is increasing the carbon, the CO2 in our atmosphere, which is not good, which it doesn't matter what anybody says and how simple that it is that these scientists sit and say, oh, it's good for the trees. It isn't. And everything that's out there that is published by verified sources and climate scientists over the last 20 years at least has showed that. And you know, I've talked about the climate people, the scientists that have moral and ethical issues. And I'm not going to go into that today. I basically wanted to say that that article was, the journal article was a good one, but it was taken out of context and everybody ran with it. And that is why I did not put it on Environmental Coffee House. Simple. So that being said, I want to move on to a couple more things, and I hope you guys can share for me since I'm still in Facebook jail, which I don't like. I can't share. I can't even post in my own group. If anybody has any comments, Lori says climate blinded. Okay, maybe, but I just, you know, I've heard so many different ones, and denying, it means that people are denying the science, or they're using the science to suit their own needs, which is what the corporations in the United States and maybe all over the world, they do. They want to suit their own needs so that they can continue fracking, drilling, and extend it. And one of the things that's really, really got me angry this morning is Alaska and Ryan Zinke and the monuments. And they want to take in Alaska, and I don't have the specific name of it. There's an area in southern Alaska that in the when the EPA was taken over, I guess Scott Pruitt sat with the CEO of a mining company, and as usual, the discussion revolved around let's rape, pillage, and plunge our country for profits, basically. That's what happened. So I asked the question, where the heck are the Alaskan people? Where is Lisa Murkowski? Do they really want to it's going to actually ruin an area, a fishing area that Native Alaskans have used for thousands and thousands, and who even knows how long, of years, if this mining is allowed to happen. And Judy says they have tunnel vision. Well, I don't know where the people in Alaska are. And you know, I'll give you another one. It's pretty interesting to me. I watch the Alaska shows, really like them. But none of them ever mention climate change. I don't know if it's because the networks are telling them that they can't talk about this. And one family that really gets me is the Kilchers. And they have that huge homestead that the father got when he came to the United States. I believe it was from Norway. And that family, they talk about how they live off the grid and they live la 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 la, whatever. They use more fossil fuels than anybody I know that says they live off the grid. Love the show. I like the family, but they're always using some kind of bulldozer or ATV or some planet-eating machine. And I thought to myself, what? And where are they getting all that fuel? And if they're so off the grid, why are they doing that? They have cattle, and they use horses to round up the cattle. They do old-time ranching activities, but everything they do and everything they build is completely using fossil fuels. I still watch the show. Judy says the series has ended. It just reruns. No, I saw on the TV this morning, my husband had it on, that they're coming back in October. And I also like this show called Mountain Men. They're not necessarily all in Alaska. There's one guy on that show named Tom, and he does live a pretty off-the-grid lifestyle with his wife. He's a trapper. I don't particularly like trapping, but Tom uses every single part of the animal. And he's shown us on that show the ways that you skin the animal and what you can do with everything. And they eat everything. Then there's the other guy, Marty Maiorato, who is up in Alaska, who is a trapper. He is just a trapper. He is a guy that he goes and he sets his trap lines. He has his own airplane, and he's an amazing person. I mean, this guy has withstood weather and everything you can imagine. And even when he's talking about the no snow winters that he's experienced, he doesn't talk about climate change. So I think there's a concerted effort in our media, not to talk about it, because talking about climate change would then scare off sponsors. Talking about climate change might even wake up the American public, God forbid. So I really wanted to get to that because of that article I read about Alaska and basically the monuments. And I've been talking about this for a long time online, the monuments. Ryan Zinke, at least 10 of the monuments from Obama's era. And just because it was from Obama's era and the name Obama, they want to get rid of them. These are sacred lands that our Native Americans treasure. But our country is going to sell out, and they are going to allow coal mining and fracking and drilling in areas that should never, ever be touched. And whether you want to believe it or not, that kind of activity will definitely affect our CO2 levels. It is just absolutely the truth. And I was angry this morning, and I was bouncing around the house and cursing and being pretty pissed off at, this article and then everything I read about the monuments and I can't stand the TV, but my husband likes television, so I do tape those shows that we do have in common. We'll watch together so that we have, we do something besides what we do outdoors in our beautiful land. But we are in a very precarious and scary time. And what is this comment? Judy says they don't watch TV, etc., so they probably are not aware, of the climate change wording. And it does scare. Lori says it scares off her family. Well, what are we going to do? And Lori, you've just lived through a horrible time in Houston. Your house is affected by flooding. What are we going to do when these continue? We essentially have to talk about this. This has to become a more mainstream discussion. I've seen it during Harvey and I've seen it during Irma, discussed a tiny little bit on the mainstream media because it's my business to see what's going on. I have this page, Environmental Coffee House. So it is my business to watch television because I need to see what the mainstream media is saying. Dale says they're taking 90% of bears' ears in Utah. I have been talking about this for over a year. And that little weasel from Utah who's now going to resign, and he wanted, really basically they're just selling out their state. And Lori, as I see you commenting here, Environmental Coffee House and our hearts have gone out to you in Houston, and I've offered our platform for you. If you need to talk, and if you want to talk, if you want to do a live stream, come on to Environmental Coffee House, with me or without me. You've got a story to tell. You're on the front lines, Lori. Our hearts really do feel for you and your family. Houston had some poor planning. And I don't know if you were in a floodplain, but everything I read said they did not, in the city and in the surrounding areas, they weren't prepared properly. And I have done a live stream about the gentleman that was the head of flood planning, and he just didn't want to They didn't want to do anything. So that's the result. And I also read something yesterday that says, well, we can't really call people that are displaced all over the world by climate change, we can't call them climate refugees, because the word refugee does not signify what's happening with people that are leaving because of climate change. That governments with refugees have a duty that they've offered people, and that's why they're refugees, to come to their countries and they will help. People that are getting displaced by climate change are going to find a much harder road. A much harder road. And I think it's going to keep happening. People are going to move because they're not going to be able to rebuild time after time on the coasts. People that live in the Everglades are seeing the complete decimation of the Everglades due to the salinity of the water that's rising into the fresh water. All over. It is all over. And we can talk about the monarch butterfly extinction because of Round Top. We can talk about the air quality concessions that the EPA is willing to give up. Oh, and this is another one that makes me mad. The EPA is telling the airline industry, hell with the emissions standards. Build what you want. Basically. Taking away restrictions for new aircraft. Aircraft and the airplanes that fly around are a huge cause of pollution. Every day. There's a lot of it. I'm not going to go into sitting here in the scientific wording that I don't have at the top of my head. But we are in a dangerous time. Even fracking, radon, is liberated by fracking. And it is polluting house wells. And it is sinking into foundations in Pennsylvania as the fracking continues. And we all know about the earthquakes. I don't know where Scott Pruitt's head is, up his ass, I suppose, because his state is having earthquakes unprecedented from what we've ever seen. All of those people that have been chosen by 45 and his 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, they all have their head up their collective asses. I could be screaming and yelling because I'm completely disgusted. I read these things daily, and it makes me angry, it makes me cry, but it makes me have a sick feeling in my stomach. And basically, where are we going to be after this presidency? I hope to God that he's not reelected in 2020 by some short-sighted bullshit that happens with the parties. You know, the duopoly is so corrupt, and we know that well, I'm going to say the DNC because I am not going to go as far as saying Democrats, because I live in a local area where the Democratic Party, local people are beautiful people, and they are so dedicated to a better world. And I'm going to say hi to Splat. Hi, Splatterhead. I miss you. I miss you. And yes, Rebecca, the frustration is palpable. So I just had to do this morning, and I didn't want to yell and scream. I was on last night. I typically don't do a lot of live streams in a row, but that article in Gizmodo I thought was really important because of the fact that everybody was running around seizing on this one scientific study and misunderstanding it and saying that, see, we don't have to worry. We can go on doing the same things we've always done. And guess what? We can't. And if we continue, you like to breathe? Well, guess what? Breathing's going to be a commodity. I firmly believe it. I want a better world for my daughter, if there's going to be a world for her. She's 29. If the human species does not go extinct by its own hands. And Dale, I know I'm cheering you up. I can cheer you up though, because you know what? I always cheer everybody up when I show the beauty of where I am. And I can cheer you up by saying, hey, tornado or not, it is still a beautiful piece of property, and we are still blessed, and we are still lucky. So do what I do and take the anger, take the frustration, take the tears and turn it into activism, turn it into work, and turn it into change and education. I could be a lot worse, but I won't. On camera. It doesn't do anybody any good. We all know the score. I just really want people to share and share my words. You know, I'm not looking for notoriety at this age. Not looking to be a star. I'm not even looking for gazillions of views. I'm just looking to wake up 1 or 2 or 3, maybe 4 people. That's it. And I'm going to continue doing it. So you guys all have a wonderful day. Thanks for coming. And thanks for sitting with me and listening to the article. And peace. We love you. And stick with Environmental Coffee House. Lots of good things are coming up. And Lori, I'm so happy that you joined. Peace, everybody. Give our hearts to Lori Root Riley in Houston, and send her every bit of healing karma for her family, as well as everybody else that's been affected by all of these horrific events that have happened this year in this short summer. Thank you, Dale, and thank you, Lynn, and thank you, Judy, and thank you, everyone. Peace.